An Egyptian air jet crashes, terror suspected. If national security and terrorism become the biggest issues here, how will that impact the presidential race? Then a year ago, you would have thought I was crazy for even asking the following question. But is it really possible, really projectable, that Donald Trump could win the White House? New numbers are out. For the Donald, things are looking up. Also, Bernie Sanders not afraid to burn bridges, it seems. He is not going away, and he is stirring up trouble within the party. How much trouble could he cause for Hillary? Good evening, everybody, and welcome to RFL. I'm Richard French. Still more questions than answers about the EgyptAir jet that crashed this morning. Investigators trying to figure out what caused the Airbus A320 with 66 people on board to disappear suddenly from radar. The plane left Charles de Gaulle Airport in Paris at 11:09 local time last night, bound for Cairo. With only 20 minutes left in the 4-hour flight, the pilot spoke to air traffic control saying all was fine. 3 minutes later, the jet, in Egyptian airspace at a cruising altitude of 37,000 feet, vanished from radar.
Airplanes, airliners do not just disappear, which is why we're looking first and primarily at this idea that something catastrophic occurred, something perhaps like a bomb.
Egyptian officials saying while it is still early in the investigation, they're considering terrorism as a possibility.
If you analyze the situation properly, the possibility of having a different action or having a terror attack is higher than the possibility of having a technical.
Family members of the passengers and 10 crew members gathering at airports in Paris and Cairo waiting for answers. Now, it didn't take long for the crash there to get political here. Donald Trump immediately tweeting this, quote, "Looks like yet another terrorist attack. Airplane departed from Paris. When will we get tough, smart, and vigilant? Great hate and sickness," with an exclamation point. Now, this is what The Atlantic had to say about it. Mr. Trump's tweet, that is. They said that it was at once totally irresponsible and politically wily, speculating on the cause of a crash that killed 66 people in the absence of any particular information is bad practice. On the other hand, it's easy to imagine that Trump's speculation will help him. If it turns out to be terrorism, Trump will look both tough-talking and clairvoyant, willing to offer uncomfortable truths, while others were reticent to speak out. Let's bring in our panel right now. Richard Brodsky, former Democratic New York State Assemblyman, senior fellow at Demos, a professor at NYU, and full-fledged member of the media. Dominic Carter, political journalist and author, former Democratic New Jersey Congressman Steve Rothman, who we're dragging into this world, and Andrew Whitman, our senior political correspondent. And you know, listen, before we even get into Trump's motivations and what he said and what he did and how this plays into the race, you were privy to some of these security briefings. How much do you think, from what you had seen before and kind of the trending of this, should we expect that between now and November, let alone for the next administration, whoever the president is, this is going to keep being a recurring problem over and over again?
The problem being terrorists trying to kill people. Oh, that's going to continue. ISIS and Islamic radical terrorists.
But looking for Western soft and hard targets.
Soft targets, hard targets, they just want to disrupt the world. They want to caliphate. Now remember, they're in an infinitesimally small percentage of the world's Muslim population, but they are very dangerous, and they're out to kill as many in the West, to create terror and fear, and also to cause an overreaction by the West, which will either hurt our freedoms here where we live or cause us to do something stupid overseas.
Richard, first, what Trump did. Did you agree with what The Atlantic said, while maybe reprehensible, also politically smart?
I haven't the foggiest idea anymore. And since we've all been so cosmically wrong about what works and what doesn't work, for people who see Trump in a certain light, the bell goes on. When that goes on, you go, you don't want that guy with his hand on the nuclear button. For people who see Trump in a much different light, as sort of a tough-talking change of pace, there he goes, and he's right again. What's fascinating about this is you don't know who's left in the middle, and you don't know whether any of this appeals to people who don't have a predisposition for or against Trump. So, you know, big bucks that we're all given for this, I don't know.
You know, Dom, like Richard said, you don't know anymore, but I said when I heard this morning, imagine if he's wrong. Imagine if it turns out that there was a technical malfunction or whatever else, and it wasn't terrorism. And at this point, it looks like it was, but we don't know.
Richard,
right?
But he's not going to be wrong. It's the sad times what the congressman alluded
but my
to.
point is, there have been technical difficulties on planes. I don't think it's going to happen here, but he didn't know.
Duke lacrosse team.
I'm not going to go into a Duke lacrosse situation, but on this, any reasonable person can conclude that it's probably terrorist related. Wait, let me just finish, Mr. Brodsky.
The rest of the world doesn't know.
Let me just finish. You just said that Trump is doing his thing whether we like it or not, right? Basically, that's what you said. Yeah. So in all likelihood, he's going to be right again, and this plays right into his hand in terms of an unconventional times with terrorism requires an unconventional candidate. Donald Trump.
Is there any downside to anything Donald Trump tweets? I mean, if the Taco Bowl thing didn't work against him, if he guesses wrong that a plane crash is terrorism?
Let's play that out, because certainly it gets the instantaneous reaction. If you believe in the argument that all publicity, there's no such thing as bad publicity as long as you're talking about the person, absolutely it doesn't harm them. But we've seen polling, old polling, it doesn't work, but head-to-head on national security issues, people trusted Hillary more than him. My question is, I think this is where you had 17 people that you could play off before. Now people start to be able to whittle it down to 2 people. And while I know people, the Middle East positions of the 2 candidates won't in the end decide the presidency, you do have to say the next president's probably going to have to make a tough call one way or the other. Do they look at this guy, Andrew, and say, you know, it's okay to do sound bites? Or he could put troops in harm's way, or he could start major problems in the Middle East. That's got to give somebody pause.
You would think it might.
The 10% out there that haven't made up their mind.
And Hillary Clinton does lead Trump when it comes to national security issues. However, if you take a generic Democrat and a generic Republican and you put a terrorist attack into the mix, it almost always favors the generic Republican. Republicans are seen as tougher on terrorism, they're tougher on international affairs, and when it's time for a daddy in the White House, that voters tend to go Republican.
Let me offer a couple of thoughts. There's one candidate here who has 20 years of experience as First Lady, as a U.S. Senator for 8 years, as a U.S. Secretary of State for 4 years, who knows the world leaders, military intelligence, and political leaders of the world by first name. They know her, they've worked with her. And then you have somebody else running against her who has 0 experience.
And you
who
said the same thing as me.
By
it
the way,
seem to matter.
By the way, who just said yesterday that he thought that there were parts of the United States, he mentioned Oakland, California, and Ferguson, Missouri, that were more dangerous, according to Donald Trump, than Iraq. Iraq, where thousands of people are being killed a week and tens of thousands wounded a month. Obviously, this is someone who really doesn't understand the world and doesn't factually understand what's going on.
But anybody who's already filtering this race through that prism isn't voting for Donald Trump anyway. For the 10 or 15% that are up in the air, this is the kind of thing that could tip the balance.
Okay, and here's the question, guys. For those 10 or 15%, Trump's quote, okay, probably terrorism, okay, but then when are we going to stop being so soft with these? It begs the question, all right, Donald, what would you do? He hasn't had to really answer these questions at this point. But what's he going to do?
What's your point?
My point is, at some point you have to start answering stuff.
No, you don't.
Well, I think you do.
Well,
no, you don't.
If he wants your vote, he's going to have to.
Right.
But there is apparently maybe 51% of the electorate for which he doesn't have to do that. That's the lesson of the last year. The number of us can't sit back here
But you don't think the
and
dynamics
analyze.
change, though? It's a primary and a general. You think they're interchangeable?
I thought he was wrong a year ago. You're asking the wrong people.
No.
There's no one here who got it right.
The public. You think that a campaign, whether it's a primary or a general, they're interchangeable.
Listen, what part of I don't know don't you get?
The appetite for nuanced answers to nuanced questions doesn't seem to be as strong in the voting public as it has been throughout most of our lives. That's what's making this campaign
Only
unique.
with one candidate.
And that's why we really don't know if the nuanced answers that we would get from Hillary Clinton on this will trump, pardon the pun, the just blathering that we're going to get in one line from Trump.
You know, the good news is we haven't even reached halftime in the ball game. Okay, we have 2 more months before the conventions. Then we have 5 more months before the general election. So one team may appear to be ahead or playing well. We haven't reached halftime yet.
And on that point here. Now, Trump is in it to win it, as he'll tell you. But what if I told you it's not just the campaign? He might actually win. If you haven't seen the polls that have come out, they shocked the heck out of me here. And they should have everybody at the table, even if they tell you otherwise. When we come back here, I'll show you the numbers. And then we'll say, right now, if you had to bet, who will our next commander-in-chief be? Stay with us.